The Draconian Empire had ruled the stars for more than 800 years. Their fleets had burned through 17 star systems and left nothing but silence behind. Every civilization that stood against them became dust. Every planet that refused to kneel became ash. The Draconians knew no defeat. They knew no mercy. And when their long-range sensors detected a small blue planet spinning quietly in the outer spiral arm of an unremarkable galaxy, they saw nothing but another easy conquest. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the planet grow larger on his viewing screen. It was a beautiful world. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. Green and brown landmasses spread across its face like patches on old cloth. White clouds swirled in gentle patterns across the atmosphere. Had seen many worlds in his 3 centuries of service to the Empire. This one looked soft, weak, ripe for the taking. His second officer, Sub-Commander, approached with a data tablet in his clawed hand. The Draconians were tall creatures, standing nearly 8 feet in height. Their scales were dark green, almost black, and their eyes glowed with a faint amber light. They had evolved from predators on a harsh world, and their bodies still carried the marks of that violent history. Sharp teeth filled their mouths. Curved claws tipped their fingers. Every inch of their form spoke of danger. "The scans are complete," High Commander reported. "The planet is called Earth by its inhabitants. Population approximately 9 billion. Technology level is primitive. They have basic nuclear capability and have established small colonies on the nearest planetary body, which they call the Moon. They possess no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no orbital defense platforms. Their most advanced weapons are chemical propellant projectiles and crude explosive devices." Let out a low rumble of amusement. 9 billion slaves for the Empire. The Council will be pleased. "Shall I begin the standard subjugation protocol, High Commander?" "Yes. Broadcast the surrender demand on all frequencies. Give them 1 planetary rotation to comply. If they refuse, we begin orbital bombardment of their population centers." The message was sent. Watched his fleet spread out around the blue planet like a net closing around prey. 3,000 warships, 12 million warriors, more firepower than any primitive species could imagine. The humans would see the sky darken with draconian vessels and know that their time as a free species had ended. On the surface of Earth, the message was received with crystal clarity. Every radio, every television, every digital device carried the voice of High Commander as he pronounced humanity's doom. The translation was perfect. The meaning was clear: surrender or die. Admiral Daniel stood in the underground command center beneath the Pentagon and listened to the alien broadcast with a calm expression. He was a tall man with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles to count. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations, tracking the alien fleet, calculating trajectories, and preparing response protocols. General joined him at the central display table. She was younger than Daniel, but her record was impressive. 2 tours in the Pacific Theater during the Taiwan crisis. Command of the European Unified Forces during the Russian expansion. She had earned her stars with blood and sacrifice. 3,000 ships, she said quietly. Our entire orbital capability consists of 12 armed satellites and a handful of kinetic launch platforms. We cannot fight them in space. No, Daniel agreed, we cannot. Then what do we do? Daniel looked at her with eyes that held secrets she could not imagine. We let them land. The order went out to every military installation on the planet. Do not engage, do not resist. Let the enemy come to ground. The world watched in confusion and fear as their leaders appeared to surrender without a fight. Protests erupted in cities across the globe. Riots broke out in some nations, but the military held its discipline. The plan was in motion. The Draconian fleet descended through the atmosphere on the second day. Landing craft by the thousands dropped from the bellies of warships and fell toward the surface like metal rain. They touched down on every continent: Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, Australia. Draconian warriors poured out of their vessels with weapons raised and expectations of terrified humans fleeing before them. Instead, they found empty streets. Sub-Commander led a battalion into the heart of a human city called Chicago. The tall buildings rose around them like canyon walls. The streets were wide and paved with dark stone, but there were no humans, no screaming civilians, no desperate defenders. The city was silent. "Spread out," ordered. "Find the population. They must be hiding in their structures." His warriors moved through the streets in disciplined formations. They kicked down doors. They searched buildings floor by floor. They found food still warm on tables. They found water still running from pipes. They found every sign that humans had been there moments before. But the humans themselves were gone. The same reports came in from landing sites around the world. Cities stood empty. Military bases sat abandoned. Even rural areas showed no sign of human life. 9 billion people had simply vanished. High Commander received these reports with growing unease. In 800 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Populations fled in terror. Populations fought in desperation. Populations did not simply disappear. "Find them," he ordered. "Use thermal scanning. Use ground-penetrating sensors. They must be somewhere." The search continued through the night. Draconian warriors spread across the planet, hunting for any sign of their prey. And as darkness fell across the human world, the first soldiers began to disappear. It started with isolated reports, a patrol failing to check in, a squad going silent, a company vanishing from sensor contact. Dismissed the early reports as communication failures, equipment malfunction, human interference with their signals. But the disappearances continued, and then they accelerated. By midnight, had lost contact with half his battalion. He stood in the center of an empty human plaza, surrounded by his remaining warriors, and felt something he had never experienced in his long career. Fear. The shadows around them seemed deeper than they should be. The silence pressed against their ears like a physical weight, and somewhere in the darkness something was watching, waiting, hunting. "High Commander," broadcast desperately, "something is wrong. We are under attack, but we cannot see the enemy. Request immediate extraction." The response never came. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, High Commander watched his tactical display with growing horror. One by one, the signals representing his ground forces were winking out, not retreating, not regrouping, simply ceasing to exist, and then the ships in low orbit began to vanish as well. "What is happening?" he demanded. "What is attacking us?" No one could answer. No one could see any weapons fire. No enemy vessels appeared on their sensors. The Draconian fleet was simply being erased, piece by piece, ship by ship, warrior by warrior. Opened a channel to broadcast to the entire galaxy. His last words would serve as a warning to the Empire, a message that something terrible lurked on this small blue world. "They are not what they appear to be," he said, his voice trembling. "Do not come here, do not." The transmission ended. 72 hours after the Draconian Armada arrived at Earth, it was gone. 3,000 warships, 12 million warriors. The most powerful military force in the known galaxy had vanished without a trace, and on the surface of the small blue planet, 9 billion humans emerged from their homes and continued their lives as if nothing had happened. The Draconian High Council received the final transmission from High Commander at exactly 3:47 Galactic Standard Time. The message was brief. The message was terrifying, and then there was silence. For 3 days, the Council waited for follow-up communications. They waited for victory reports. They waited for any sign that their greatest armada still existed. Nothing came. Grand Counselor paced the marble floors of the Imperial Chamber with growing agitation. He was old, even by Draconian standards, and he had seen many campaigns in his long life. He had watched the Empire grow from a single star system to a dominion spanning 17 worlds. He had witnessed the fall of species far more advanced than the primitive humans of Earth. Never in all those centuries had he experienced anything like this. "Send probe ships," he commanded. "I want eyes on that planet within the hour." The probes were launched from the nearest Draconian outpost, a military station orbiting a gas giant 3 light-years from Earth. They traveled through folded space and emerged in the Sol system within minutes. Their sensors swept across the blue planet and found exactly what the Council feared most. Nothing. Earth remained exactly as it had been before the invasion. The city stood intact. The infrastructure was undamaged. Human vehicles moved through streets. Human aircraft crossed the skies. Human satellites orbited peacefully above the atmosphere. There was no sign of battle, no evidence of the Draconian fleet, no wreckage floating in orbit, no debris scattered across the surface. 12 million warriors and 3,000 warships had been removed from existence with surgical precision. The Council fell into stunned silence as they reviewed the probe data. Some members suggested that the fleet had suffered a catastrophic malfunction, perhaps a reactor chain reaction, perhaps a navigational error that sent them into the sun. Others proposed that a plague had swept through the ranks, killing every soldier before they could send a proper report. No one wanted to speak the truth that hung heavy in the air. The humans had done this. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had destroyed the most powerful military force in the galaxy. On Earth, the real truth was even more terrifying than the Draconian Council could imagine. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that appeared on no map and existed in no official record, Lieutenant Commander Mitchell reviewed the operation reports with quiet satisfaction. The facility was vast. Corridors stretched for miles in every direction. Laboratories hummed with equipment that used principles the wider galaxy would not discover for another 1,000 years. And at the heart of it all, massive processing chambers glowed with an eerie blue light as they broke down the last remnants of the Draconian Armada. Dr. Price entered the command center with a tablet in her hand. She was the head of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, though that title barely scratched the surface of her true responsibilities. Her work involved sciences that had no names, energies that had no classification, and dimensions that had no place in conventional physics. "The integration is complete," she reported. "All 12 million subjects have been processed and absorbed. Their knowledge is now part of the collective archive. Their biological material has been recycled into raw resources. Their ships have been broken down to component molecules and redistributed to our manufacturing centers." Nodded slowly, "And the dimensional barriers?" "Sealed. The entry points we used to extract the Draconian forces have been closed. There is no evidence of our methods anywhere in normal space." Colonel Nick Bradley joined them at the central display. He was a grizzled veteran of the Dimensional Warfare Division, one of the few soldiers who knew the full extent of humanity's hidden capabilities. His body carried scars from battles fought in spaces that should not exist, against enemies that had never officially invaded Earth. "The galaxy will send investigators," Nick said. "They always do." "Let them come," replied. "They will find exactly what we want them to find. A primitive species with no advanced technology, a peaceful planet with no military capability, just another backwater world in the outer spiral arm." The deception had been maintained for more than 2 centuries. In the year 1889, human scientists first detected signals from deep space. Not random noise, not natural phenomena, structured communications from intelligent beings. The discovery was immediately classified at the highest level. A secret organization was formed to study the signals, decode their meaning, and prepare for the day when those beings came to Earth. What they learned terrified them. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It was a hunting ground. Powerful species preyed upon weaker ones. Empires rose and fell on tides of blood and fire. And Earth, with its rich resources and large population, was exactly the kind of target that attracted predators. The humans realized that if they revealed their presence, if they announced themselves to the cosmic community, they would be invaded within a generation. So they chose a different path. They hid. They pretended to be primitive. They allowed visiting alien scouts to see exactly what they expected to see: a developing species with crude technology and no understanding of the greater universe. And while the galaxy looked elsewhere, humanity secretly developed technologies beyond anything the older civilizations had achieved. They cracked the code of dimensional travel, learning to move through spaces that existed between normal reality. They developed weapons that operated on principles of physics unknown to any other species. They built defenses that could not be detected by any sensor array in existence. And they waited. The Draconians were not the first aliens to attempt invasion of Earth. They were merely the 17th. Each previous incursion had been handled quietly, efficiently, and completely. The invading forces were eliminated. Their technology was absorbed. Their knowledge was added to humanity's growing archive, and the galaxy never knew that anything had happened. Dr. Price pulled up a holographic display showing a timeline of extraterrestrial contact. 17 invasions over 200 years, 17 complete victories, and each victory had made humanity stronger. The Draconian technology is impressive, she noted. Their shield harmonics are different from anything we have encountered before. Their weapon systems use a unique energy signature. We have already begun integrating these advances into our own systems. And their population? Asked. The 12 million warriors have been processed through the absorption chambers. Their memories are now accessible through our neural networks. Their combat experiences have been analyzed, and their genetic material has been stored for future reference. Nick shook his head slowly. Sometimes I wonder if we have become the monsters. We have become survivors, corrected him. The galaxy is full of species that would exterminate humanity without a second thought. The Draconians plan to enslave 9 billion people. They plan to strip our planet of resources and leave it a dead husk. We simply refuse to let that happen. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the monitoring station. A young technician named Lisa Cooper looked up from her console with concern on her face. "Sir, we are detecting increased communications traffic in the Draconian sector. The High Council is convening an emergency session, and we are picking up probe signatures entering the outer solar system." Studied the data on the main display. "They are investigating. Let them. Make sure our surface installations are powered down. I want the planet to look exactly as primitive as they expect." The order went out to hidden bases around the world. Advanced technology was concealed behind false walls. Dimensional gateways were sealed. The vast underground networks that connected humanity's true civilization were locked down. In a matter of hours, Earth appeared to be nothing more than a developing world with no secrets worth knowing. When the Draconian probes scanned the planet, they found exactly that. And when their reports reached the High Council, the mystery only deepened. How could such a primitive species destroy such a powerful armada? The question had no answer that the Draconians could accept. So they chose to believe a comfortable lie. The Armada had suffered some internal catastrophe, a plague, a mutiny, a mechanical failure. The humans were not responsible because the humans were not capable. The universe made sense again. But deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, humanity continued its quiet work, processing the Draconian knowledge, building new weapons, preparing new defenses, and waiting for the next predator foolish enough to come to their world. The galaxy had mocked the warning, the galaxy had dismissed the threat, and the galaxy would learn in time just how terrible that mistake had been. News of the Draconian defeat spread through the galaxy like fire across dry grass. Every civilized world heard the story. Every spacefaring species discussed the mystery. 3,000 warships and 12 million warriors had traveled to a small blue planet and never returned. It was the greatest military disaster in Draconian history. It was also, according to the official explanation, absolutely not the fault of the primitive humans. The Galactic Assembly convened on the station world of Nexus Prime, a massive artificial structure that floated between the stars and served as neutral ground for 400 civilized species. Representatives from across known space gathered in the Grand Chamber, their forms as varied as the worlds that had spawned them. Beings with clicking mandibles sat beside aquatic creatures suspended in water-filled pods. Crystalline entities glowed softly next to hulking reptilian warriors. The galaxy was vast and strange, and the assembly represented its full diversity. Ambassador of the Confederacy took the central speaking platform. They were a proud species, their four-armed bodies covered in silver fur, their faces dominated by large eyes that saw across multiple spectrums. They had been spacefaring for 6,000 years and considered themselves among the elder races. We have analyzed all available data regarding the Draconian expedition to the planet called Earth, announced, his translator implant converting his words into the common tongue. Our conclusion is that the Armada suffered a catastrophic internal failure. The most likely explanation is a cascading reactor malfunction triggered by unusual solar radiation in that region of space. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The explanation was convenient. The explanation was acceptable. The explanation was almost certainly wrong. What of the transmission from their commander? Asked Ambassador of the Dominion. They were a militant species, their gray bodies encased in ceremonial armor even in the peaceful halls of the assembly. He spoke of the humans as a threat. He warned against approaching their world. Waved a dismissive hand. The words of a dying soldier in the grip of panic. The Draconian commander was clearly experiencing the effects of whatever malfunction destroyed his fleet. His warning was the product of a mind affected by radiation or toxic exposure. It has no factual basis. And the humans themselves, pressed, have we made any attempt to contact them? The humans are a primitive species with no knowledge of faster-than-light travel. They are barely capable of reaching their own moon. To suggest that they somehow destroyed the most powerful armada in known space is absurd on its face. They are simply too undeveloped to pose any threat to anyone. The Assembly voted to accept this explanation. Earth was classified as a quarantine zone, not because of any danger from the humans, but because whatever phenomenon had destroyed the Draconian fleet might still be present in that region of space. Ships were advised to avoid the Sol system. The matter was considered closed. Across the galaxy, the story became a joke. Comedians on entertainment broadcasts made fun of the mighty Draconians who had been defeated by reactor problems. Military academies used the disaster as a teaching example about the importance of equipment maintenance. The humans, when they were mentioned at all, were depicted as comical primitives who had probably not even noticed the alien ships in their sky. On Earth, humanity watched and listened and said nothing. Generals stood in a command center that existed outside of normal space. The facility occupied a pocket dimension that had been carved out of reality itself, accessible only through gates that responded to specific genetic markers. From this hidden vantage point, humanity monitored every major civilization within 1,000 light years. Dr. Laura joined him at the observation display. She was the chief, responsible for analyzing alien cultures and predicting their behavior. Her work had been instrumental in preparing for 17 separate invasions, and her predictions had proven accurate every single time. The explanation is being widely accepted, she reported. Most species are content to believe that the Draconians simply suffered bad luck. A few dissenting voices have raised questions, but they are being dismissed as paranoid. Good, replied. Let them mock, let them laugh. Every species that underestimates us makes the same mistake. The display before them showed intercepted communications from across the galaxy, military channels, diplomatic dispatches, scientific reports. Humanity had cracked every encryption used by every major civilization, and they listened to everything. The secrets of the cosmos were laid bare before them, and no one knew. They are discussing a follow-up expedition, Laura noted. Their military council believes the Draconians were incompetent. They think they can succeed where others have failed. Of course they do, allowed himself a small smile. Pride is the same across every species. They cannot imagine that primitives could defeat them. They cannot conceive of a threat they cannot see. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for over 2 centuries. From the first intercepted alien signal to the present day, every resource had been devoted to a single goal: survival. The human race had looked at the galaxy and seen a jungle filled with predators. They had understood that in such an environment, the only options were to become prey or become something even more dangerous. They chose to become dangerous. The technology humanity had developed in secret was beyond anything the galaxy could imagine. Dimensional folding allowed them to move through spaces that did not exist in normal reality. Phase shifting rendered their soldiers invisible to every known sensor type. Neural integration gave them access to the collected knowledge of every species they had absorbed, and the processing chambers converted biological material into pure energy with perfect efficiency. But the most terrifying capability was the one that no alien had ever survived to report. Humanity had learned to harvest consciousness itself. When the Draconians invaded, their soldiers were not simply killed. Their bodies were broken down into component molecules, yes, but their minds, their memories, their very essence was extracted and preserved. 12 million Draconian warriors now existed in a digital archive, their experiences accessible to any human with the proper clearance. Their combat skills had been analyzed and incorporated into human training programs. Their knowledge of Draconian technology had been used to improve human systems. In a very real sense, the Draconian invasion had made humanity stronger, and that was by design. "How long until they make their move?" asked. Laura consulted her projections. "Based on their communication patterns and historical behavior, I estimate 6 to 12 months. They will want to gather intelligence first. They will send scouts and probes, and then they will come in force, convinced that stealth and surprise will succeed where brute force failed. Make sure our surface installations are prepared. I want them to see exactly what they expect to see, nothing more." The order was relayed through secure channels that operated outside of normal spacetime. Across Earth, human cities continued their normal activities. Traffic moved through streets. People went to work and school. The world appeared to be exactly as primitive as the galaxy believed. But beneath the surface, an entire civilization waited. Military forces that could not be detected by any alien sensor. Weapons that could reach across dimensions. Defenses that had never failed against any attacker. And at the heart of it all, a cold determination that the human race would survive no matter the cost. General looked out at the stars through a window that opened onto a dimension they could not perceive. Somewhere out there, alien commanders were planning their invasion. Alien soldiers were training for a conquest they believed would be easy. Alien leaders were dismissing warnings that they should have heeded. "Let them come," he said quietly. "Let them all come. They will learn what the Draconians learned. They will learn what every invader learns when they come to Earth." He turned away from the window and walked toward the command center where his staff waited for orders. The galaxy had mocked the warning. The galaxy had laughed at the primitives. And soon, the galaxy would understand that the joke was on them. The humans were not prey. The humans were not victims. The humans were something new in the cosmic order, something the universe had never seen before. They were the trap that closed on anyone foolish enough to spring it. The Dominion prided itself on learning from the mistakes of others. For 3 centuries, They had studied the failures of rival civilizations and used those lessons to strengthen their own military doctrine. When news of the Draconian disaster reached their command councils, they did not dismiss it as mere accident. They analyzed it. They theorized about it. And they concluded that the Draconians had failed because they were arrogant and careless. High Arbiter stood before the assembled war council in the great hall of the Dominion's capital world. He was old his gray skin weathered and from decades of combat, but his mind remained sharp, and his reputation as a military strategist was unmatched. The Draconians announced their arrival, he said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. They broadcast their intentions. They gave the humans time to prepare whatever primitive defenses they possessed. They landed in force without reconnaissance. They treated the invasion as a parade rather than a military operation. These mistakes cost them everything. The council members nodded in agreement. The Draconian approach had been sloppy. Everyone could see that now. "We will not repeat their errors," continued. "Our fleet will approach in complete stealth. Our soldiers will land without warning. We will study the humans before we strike. And when we do strike, it will be swift, silent, and absolute." The plan was approved. 800 stealth cruisers were assembled, each equipped with the most advanced cloaking technology in the arsenal. 2 million soldiers were selected from the elite ranks of the Dominion military. Every detail was planned with obsessive precision. Nothing would be left to chance. The fleet departed 3 months later, slipping through folded space without a single transmission that might alert watching eyes. They emerged at the edge of the Sol system and crept toward Earth on minimal power, their heat signatures masked, their electronic emissions silenced. Even their thoughts were shielded by neural dampeners that prevented any telepathic species from detecting their presence. They took up positions around Earth's moon, hidden in the shadows of craters and canyons. For 2 weeks they watched, they scanned, they analyzed, and they found exactly what they expected to find. The humans were primitive. Their cities sprawled across the planet's surface without any defensive shielding. Their military installations were clearly visible from orbit. Their communications were unencrypted and easily monitored. They showed no awareness of the alien fleet hiding in their celestial neighborhood. "They are blind," observed with satisfaction. "They have no idea we are here." The first wave of shock troops landed in the remote regions of Earth. The Australian outback, the Siberian wilderness, the Canadian tundras. Small teams established forward bases and began reconnaissance operations. They moved through the terrain unseen, gathering intelligence on human population centers and military capabilities. On the 3rd day, Sergeant Park received the alert at his post in Antarctica. The facility where served was officially a climate research station. In reality, it was a command node for the Dimensional Warfare Division, one of dozens scattered across Earth's surface. The station existed partially in normal space and partially in a dimensional fold that no alien sensor could detect. Was a young man with calm eyes and steady hands. He had been recruited into the division straight out of Special Forces training, selected for his psychological stability and his ability to adapt to realities that would drive ordinary soldiers insane. For 3 years, he had trained to fight enemies from angles that should not exist. Now his training would be put to the test. "We have contacts in Sector 7, reported Corporal Maria Santos, his second in command. 12 hostiles establishing a forward observation post. They appear to be military, elite classification." Studied the display showing the alien positions. They had chosen their landing site well. It was remote, unpopulated, and offered good cover. They clearly expected to operate undetected for weeks while they gathered intelligence. They had no idea that they had been observed from the moment they entered the solar system. Standard containment protocol ordered. 12 operators, no survivors, no evidence. His team activated their phase shift armor and stepped through a dimensional gate that opened onto the frozen landscape of northern Canada. They emerged in a space between spaces, visible only as faint distortions in the air. The soldiers, busy setting up their equipment, saw nothing. The elimination took less than 3 minutes. Operators struck from directions that did not exist in normal geometry. They emerged from angles that eyes could not perceive, their weapons firing dimensional projectiles that bypassed armor entirely. The alien soldiers died without understanding what was killing them. They fired their plasma rifles at empty air. They screamed into communicators that had already been jammed. And one by one, they fell. When it was over, his team collected the bodies and equipment. Everything was transported to a processing facility where it would be broken down and analyzed. The forward base was erased from existence as if it had never been there. Across the planet, similar scenes played out in perfect coordination. Human operators eliminated scouts in Australia, in Siberia, in the Amazon rainforest, in the Sahara Desert. Every landing team was located, targeted, and removed within hours of their arrival. High Arbiter watched his tactical display with growing confusion. One by one, the signals from his ground teams were vanishing. No distress calls, no combat reports, no explanation, just silence. "Send reinforcements to the last known positions," he ordered, "and launch additional reconnaissance drones." The reinforcements landed and found nothing. The drones scanned empty terrain. It was as if the first wave of soldiers had simply walked off the face of the earth. Felt the first stirrings of unease. This was not how primitive species behaved. This was not how easy conquests proceeded. Something was wrong. "Prepare the main assault force," he commanded. "We are done with reconnaissance. We take the planet now." Transport ships launched from the hidden fleet and descended toward Earth's surface. 10,000 soldiers in the first wave, then 20,000 more, then 100,000. They landed in the outskirts of major cities, expecting to meet scattered resistance from confused defenders. They met something else entirely. Captain Amy led her platoon through a dimensional corridor that opened directly onto the bridge of his flagship. One moment, the command staff was coordinating the invasion from the safety of lunar orbit. The next moment, human soldiers stood among them, weapons raised. Stared at the intruders with disbelief. He had not detected their approach. He had not heard any alarms. They had simply appeared as if stepping out of thin air. "You were warned," Amy said, her voice calm and cold. "The galaxy chose not to listen." She raised her weapon and fired. The battle for the fleet lasted less than an hour. Human operators appeared on every ship simultaneously, emerging from dimensional folds that the aliens could not see or understand. They moved through corridors that seemed to bend around them. They struck from shadows that should not have existed, and they showed no mercy. When it was over, 800 stealth cruisers floated dead in lunar orbit. 2 million soldiers had been collected for processing, and the galaxy's second greatest military power had been erased from existence just as completely as the first. On the surface of Earth, Sergeant Park watched the final status report scroll across his display. Another invasion, another victory, another reminder that humanity would not be conquered. He thought about the soldiers he had killed. They had believed themselves to be predators, coming to claim easy prey. They had trusted their technology, their training, their military traditions, and they had died just like the Draconians before them, unable to comprehend the nature of the enemy they faced. "How many more will come?" Maria asked quietly. Shook his head. "As many as it takes, until the galaxy learns to leave us alone." He stepped back through the dimensional gate and returned to his station beneath the Antarctic ice. Above him, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were hearing rumors of another vanished fleet. Some would dismiss the stories. Some would invent explanations. and some would start to wonder if there was something on that small blue planet that the galaxy did not understand. The second wave had come and gone. The second warning had been ignored, but humanity remained patient. They had waited 2 centuries for the galaxy to discover them. They could wait a little longer for the galaxy to understand what they truly were. The disappearance of the Dominion could not be ignored. 2 of the galaxy's most powerful military forces had ventured to a small blue planet in the outer spiral arm and never returned. 5,000 warships, 14 million warriors. Gone without explanation, gone without debris, gone as if they had never existed at all. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session on Nexus Prime. This time, there was no mockery. This time, there were no jokes about equipment malfunctions or incompetent commanders. The representatives of 400 spacefaring civilizations gathered in the Grand Chamber with fear in their hearts and questions on their tongues. Ambassador of the Confederacy no longer spoke with dismissive confidence. His silver fur had dulled with stress, and his large eyes darted nervously around the chamber. "We must acknowledge the possibility that our previous assessment was incorrect," he said carefully. "The loss of 2 major fleets cannot be explained by coincidence. Something on Earth is destroying any vessel that approaches." "Then we must investigate," declared Ambassador of the Dominion. His voice was hard with grief and rage. They had lost 2 million of their finest soldiers. Their military supremacy had been shattered in a single operation. They wanted answers. They wanted revenge. "With what forces?" asked a delegate from the Crystalline Collective. "Would you send another fleet to suffer the same fate?" The debate raged for hours. Some called for a united armada of all galactic powers to overwhelm whatever defenses the humans possessed. Others argued for complete isolation, sealing off the Sol system and forbidding any ship from approaching. A few suggested attempting peaceful contact, reaching out to the humans through diplomatic channels rather than military might. Then the survivor arrived. Soldier had been stationed on an orbital relay platform during the Draconian invasion. He was too far from the main fleet to be caught in whatever had consumed his comrades. When the Armada vanished, he had fled in a small escape pod, drifting through space for months before being recovered by a patrol ship. The Assembly brought him to the chamber to give testimony. He stood before 400 representatives of the galaxy's greatest civilizations, and he told them what he had seen. "They knew we were coming," began. His scales had faded to a pale gray and his amber eyes held a haunted emptiness. "From the moment we entered their system, they knew. The primitives we observed on our screens were an illusion, a mask, something to make us feel safe." The chamber fell silent as he continued. "I watched through long-range sensors as my fleet descended to the surface. I saw our warriors spread across their world, searching for enemies that were not there. And then I saw the hands." Hands asked, "What do you mean?" "Hands reaching from nowhere, from angles that should not exist, from spaces that our eyes could not perceive. They came out of shadows that were deeper than any shadow should be. They came from walls and floors and empty air, and they took our soldiers, one by one, group by group, ship by ship." His voice trembled as the memories overwhelmed him. "I heard the screaming. Every communication channel was filled with the voices of dying warriors. They screamed that something was pulling them apart. They screamed that they could see things in the darkness, things with too many eyes, things with mouths that opened into infinity. And then the screaming stopped and there was only silence." A ripple of horror passed through the assembly. Representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some covered their sensory organs as if they could block out the terrible words. "The ships in orbit were next," continued. "I watched the Eternal Dominion simply fold in on itself, not explode, not break apart, fold, as if something was crumpling it like paper and stuffing it into a hole that did not exist. The other ships followed. 3,000 vessels crushed into nothing in a matter of hours." He looked around the chamber with eyes that had seen too much. They do not kill, he said finally. They harvest. Every species that has ever invaded their world still exists somewhere inside them. The Draconians are not dead. They are screaming inside Earth, adding to its power. 14 million souls trapped forever, feeding something that grows stronger with every invasion. The assembly erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded proof. Others called for immediate evacuation of all systems near Earth. The careful order of galactic diplomacy shattered in the face of primal terror. On Earth, Admiral Daniel watched the intercepted broadcast with grim satisfaction. He stood in the observation deck of a facility that existed outside of normal reality, surrounded by technology that the galaxy could not imagine. The survivors' testimony is spreading across all communication networks, reported Dr. Price. Panic is beginning in the outer systems. Several minor civilizations are already rerouting their shipping lanes away from our sector. Good, Daniel replied. Let them fear. Fear will keep them away far more effectively than any weapon. Behind him, vast processing chambers hummed with power. The consciousness of 14 million conquered warriors existed in those chambers, their memories and experiences stored in crystalline matrices that would endure for. They were not dead, exactly, but they were no longer truly alive either. They existed in a state between, their essence preserved and analyzed, their knowledge added to humanity's ever-growing archive. "Is this what we have become?" asked Colonel Nick Bradley. He stood apart from the others, his face troubled. "A species that consumes the souls of its enemies." Daniel turned to face him. His eyes held depths that seemed to extend beyond normal space, as if something vast looked out through them. "We have become survivors," he said. "The galaxy gave us no choice. Every civilization that reaches the stars faces the same decision: become prey or become predator. We chose to become something else, something that the universe has never seen before." "And what is that?" "A warning." He walked to the observation window and looked out at a view that spanned dimensions. Somewhere in normal space, Earth spun peacefully on its axis. Its cities bustled with activity. Its people lived their lives unaware of the vast machinery hidden beneath their feet. They did not know that their world sat at the center of a web that stretched across multiple planes of existence. They did not know that their species had become the most dangerous predator in the cosmos. "Every empire builds monuments to its power," Daniel said quietly. "The Draconians conquered systems, the dominated trade routes, the accumulated wisdom. We have taken a different path. We have made ourselves into something that cannot be conquered, something that only grows stronger when attacked." He turned back to face his staff, men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity, soldiers who fought in dimensions that would drive ordinary minds to madness, scientists who had unlocked secrets that no other species had discovered. "The galaxy will learn," he continued. "Some will heed the warning and stay away. Others will test our defenses and become part of our strength. In time, every civilization will understand that Earth is not a planet to be conquered. It is a boundary that cannot be crossed." Across the galaxy, the word spread. Species that had looked upon Earth with contempt now looked upon it with terror. Navigation computers were updated to exclude the Sol system from all travel routes. Children were taught to fear the small blue world in the outer spiral arm. And the stories grew with each telling, becoming legends, becoming myths, becoming warnings passed from generation to generation. Never go to Earth. Never attract their attention. Never forget what happens to those who do. The humans had not chosen to become monsters. The galaxy had forced that choice upon them. But having made the choice, they embraced it completely. They became the thing that empires feared. They became the darkness that lurked at the edge of maps. They became the reminder that the universe was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And in the quiet depths beneath their peaceful world, they continued their work, processing the conquered, absorbing their knowledge, building their strength. waiting for the next fool who ignored the warning. The Draconian Armada had vanished on Earth. The galaxy had mocked the warning, and now the galaxy understood why that warning should have been heeded. Humanity was no longer alone in the cosmos. They never had been, but now the cosmos understood what that truly meant. Earth was not just a world, Earth was a promise. Come if you dare, attack if you must, but understand that you will not destroy us. You will only make us stronger,